Oh, wow. 2 o'clock in the morning. In the most ancient, primitive swamp on the continent. Darkness like velvet. The sound of things crawling in the night. Looks familiar, doesn't it? That's where we all came from, that primordial ooze, that swamp of life. You know, there are those who say that self was a swamp out of which sprang these creatures. Oh, yes, when you were a tadpole and I was a fish. In the Paleozoic time, and side by side on the ebbing tide, we sprawled through the ooze and slime, or skittered with many a caudal flip through the depths of the Cambrian fen. Oh, my heart was rife with the joy of life, for I loved you even then. Oh, yes. Mindless we lived, and mindless we loved, and mindless at last we died. And deep in the rift of the Caradoc drift, we slumbered side by side. The world turned on in the lathe of time. The hot lands heaved amain, till we caught our breath from the womb of death and crept into the light again. We were amphibians, scaled and tailed, and drab as a dead man's hand. We coiled at ease neath the dripping trees, or trailed through the mud and sand, croaking and blind, with our 3 clawed feet writing a language dumb, with never a spark in the empty dark to hint at a life to come. And yet we lived, and happy we loved, and happy we died once more. And now here we are, watching the ancient swamp, our old home, on a television screen. He's a swamp man, looking for his roots. He can feel the itchy spots on his shoulders where the fins once fluttered. The slight bulges on the neck where the gills once heaved and filtered oxygen out of the water like the saurian himself. Eye to eye with the alligators, we tip our hat to our neighbors and friends. In the Cambrian fen, the Okefenokee swamp.
He put some catgut strings on a gator jaw, yeah, the swamp man. And he picked it with a
And the buzzards wait. All you got to do is stagger and fall, and you're gone in a minute, picked clean. Your bones glowing in the bottom of the swamp. He's a swamp man. We all are swamp men, deep down. Deep down, where the memories lie. So deep that they rarely surface, but they're always there. Fish of the soul. Fluttering. Breeding. Eating and dying. The Okeefenokee swamp, deep down in Georgia, is the oldest swamp in the North American continent, and the most mysterious. Thousands of miles of mirror water, lying between mangrove roots, twisted and gnarled live oaks, peopled by millions upon millions of creatures who know not the sight of man. "10,000 spiders, varieties so rare as to be found only in the swamp, all waiting for their prey. Alligators living and breathing and dying and living and breathing as they have since the days of the dinosaur, eating their way through time. Flesh-eating plants, flesh-eating insects that shed their skin and eat it and go on and eat more. Spots of beauty. My mother's iris. Birds with their beaties in the trillions. Life is short. Gone. Just like that. In the great swamp. Felines creep through the forest. And a swamp man moves on, looking for his roots, searching, hunting. Among the great mold heap, the compost heap, the gnarled midden of time. Poisonous reptiles as the water glistens. This is really sinister. I love it. When I was about, 10 or 12 years old, I went through my library phase. I guess all kids go through a library phase, you know. They sit down there at the library and they try to read everything from one end of the shelf to the other. And I came across a whole series of kid books. I mean, they were kind of like the boys' version of Nancy Drew, and his hero was called Tom Slade, and he was an Eagle Scout. You know what an Eagle Scout is when you spend your life as a tenderfoot? I'll tell you. In fact, the highest rank I ever achieved was second-class Scout, and Tom Slade was a Scout. And there was this book about Tom Slade called Tom Slade in the Great Okefenokee Swamp. Boy. Took his friend Pee-wee, who was a scout, and a couple of other kids. Of course, they were very intrepid scouts. And they traveled to the Okefenokee Swamp. Now, if you're living on the south side of Chicago, and you just hear the name Okefenokee Swamp, it's enough to make your bladder feel awful tight. What did they do in the Okefenokee Swamp? Well, they did what scouts always do in the Okefenokee Swamp. They explored in this trackless wilderness. And I'm sitting down there with the smell of the steel mills drifting into the library, and you could hear the blacksmith's whistle going off. And I was transported to this wilderness. At last, here I am with Tom Slade, the ghost of Tom Slade. The Okefenokee Swamp covers hundreds of miles. And it's truly a genuine, rare swamp. Not many of them in the world, you know. And like all swamps, it's just filled with living, crawling, creeping, hissing, biting, burrowing, burping things of all kinds. Spiders spinning webs, fish building nests. Oh, God. I bet I could fire off a 105 howitzer in any direction from here and not come within 5 miles of a Kentucky Fried Chicken joint. The woods. The virgin woods. Listen to that silence. You know, I'll never forget the night that Schwartz and I were out seining for crawdads in the swamp there, right next to the Warren G. Harding School. We took a burlap bag, you know, the kind that's kind of porous that they have potatoes in, and we put handles on each end of it. We used to go out seining for whatever we could catch, and we'd catch these crawdads, and they looked like little lobsters. Now, in that part of the Midwest, lobsters were only rumors. You'd see them in cartoons and stuff. You never really saw a real lobster. But they looked like lobsters, see. So one night, Schwartz, we'd scooped up about 100 of these things in a pail. Schwartz says, let's take them down in the basement and eat them. You realize what kind of guts that took to eat crawdads when nobody had ever eaten a crawdad for miles around? Well, we didn't know how to cook them or anything, so we took them down in the basement, had this old stove in Schwartz's basement, and we dumped them into a pan, put some water on, and we boiled them. We actually boiled crawdads. And we hid in Schwartz's coal bin, and we bit off the tails of crawdads and crunched them sitting squatting down there amid the coal dust. And for those 5 minutes, me and Schwartz were truly one with primeval man. Place is just crawling with fish. What kind do they have? Well, they say there's pickerel in here so big that people are even afraid to look them in the eye. There's largemouth bass. One guy was out here fishing, and he cast out there, right out that spot over there. He laid a plug over there. This big largemouth come out of the bully pads, took a swat at his bait. Guy took a jump backwards. He reeled it in fast, and that fish chased him for over 3 miles in these canals with his motor going full out. He's a fish here. Don't mind if I go back to work here a little bit, see? Maybe we'll have some action here. Never know. A little early in the day for... Uh-oh. That? I just had a little business there. You might have seen it. One thing you learn about fishing, I'm using a Swedish spinner, and you have to reel it in fast. I'll have a hit right in the side of the boat. Anyway, Schwartz and I were out. Uh-oh, here we got it. I think I got, no, I got a fish there, friends. That's a fish. Yep, that's a smallmouth, largemouth bass. No, I'm talking to a pickerel here. There she is. That's a mean fish. There you go. That's also known as a chain pike, known also as the shark of the waters. I have seen people bring these babies into the boat and be chased right out of their own boat by them.
alligator jaw, yeah, the swamp man. And he picked it with the tusk of an old wild hog. He's a swamp man. Well, he got a little careless with his one-piece band, and he lost 3 fingers on his picking hand.
And the great legends that are told among the people who know the swamp, that there are escaped Nazis still living deep in the wilderness, that prisoners of war from every war back to the Second Battle of Antietam are still hiding out here. And the moonshiners, oh yes, there were always moonshiners deep in the Okeefenokee, and they turned out interesting moonshine. There's a lot of different kinds, you know, of moonshine. First of all, there's the fighting kind. Of course, we know that one. And then there's the loving kind. And then the singing kind. And there's one called Autumn Leaf. Why Autumn Leaf? One drink, and you turn colors and fall. And the old buzzard, the ancient bird of prey, has looked down on millions of creatures here in this old Okefenokee swamp. But none were as interesting as those created by the late, great Walt Kelly. How could you talk about the Okefenokee swamp without talking about Pogo and his whole crowd? Pogo and Churchy LaFemme and Phineas T. Bridgeport the bear. And the alligator. Do you remember Albert? Who could forget Albert the alligator? There he goes. Oh, we can't forget Walt Kelly, one of the great American artists. And wouldn't you love to still, again, celebrate Christmas with the Pogo gang here in the swamp and sing their great anthem for Christmas? Wherever you are, Walt Kelly, up there in the great empty page, the great comic strip of departed cartoonists, we still remember and love Pogo. Pogo the possum and Chuckles the buzzard, and the old stork too, that is still living here in the swamp, drifting as ghosts. And then night comes on, as it has come on for century after century, age after age, in this ancient swamp, the oldest swamp in the entire continent. 600 square miles. It hasn't changed in thousands of years. And the mists start to rise as the sun goes down, and the air cools. The mists of Sherlock Holmes and the Hound of the Baskervilles and the Thing from the Black Lagoon. As night comes on in the ancient swamp, and all the creatures start to move, because these are night creatures out here. The possum and the skunk and They live by night and sleep by day. Somewhere, thousands of miles from here, at P.J. Clark's, the martinis are flowing. The ice is crackling. Oh, they're dry and crisp. And Shepherd, he's out in the middle of the Okefenokee swamp, 10 million miles from civilization, surrounded by alligators and bullfrogs and mudcats and possums. Maybe even Pogo's out here tonight. Oh, it's a great way to go. Somehow I feel it deep in my soul. It's where we all came from, you know. It's where we're all gonna go back sometime. Climbing back down that rope ladder of evolution till finally one day we're down there swimming among the lily pads again. And we'll be... The UN will be a faint memory. Maybe not even that. The Okefenokee swamp. You know, that's an Indian word meaning trembling earth. I tell you, there's not much earth out here. What is here trembles when you walk on it. Comes right up to your ankles. Listen to that. There's a bull alligator within 50 feet of me who was out looking for a date. I wonder if he'll score tonight. I can hear him snorting and snuffing in the darkness. I hear a raccoon. He's out looking for a little frog, maybe, to put away for a quiet little snack at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is the Okefenokee swamp. Say it to yourself right now in front of that little grimy television set where you're watching this show tonight. Just say it to yourself. Okefenokee. Oh, friends, this ain't Three's Company. Oh, no. You know, I'll tell you, something's happened to me out here. I don't like the looks of it. I've got myself a 6-month supply of moon pies right here. I've got a year's supply of RC Cola. Got myself some fishing tackle. Got myself a nice pole to do some poling. And my skin is getting rougher and tougher. He's a swamp. I say he's a swamp man. He's got skin like an alligator hide. He's out looking for business tonight. He's a swamp man. He's a swamp man. Goodbye, civilization. I've had enough of this TV baloney. I've had enough of it. I'm leaving. I'll see you guys at the end of the evolutionary scale. I'm just staying out here forever. I'm going out searching for Chloe. I'm joining Pogo, joining the gang. I ain't never coming back. Bye-bye, TV guide. I've had enough of all those ridiculous traffic jams on the Long Island Expressway. I've had my last Big Mac. You're looking at a man who's moving out into the wilderness for good. The Okefenokee swamp.
Broadcasting.